What if I told you that your brain is literally wired to repel wealth? That every time you think about money, ancient neural pathways fire up that were designed to keep you poor, struggling, and financially trapped? And what if the solution to breaking free from this mental prison has been hiding in plain sight for over 3,000 years, written in the pages of the Bible itself? My name is Dr. Marcus Thompson, and I've spent the last 15 years studying the intersection of neuroscience and biblical wisdom. What I've discovered will shock you. The human brain has what I call wealth resistance circuits, neural networks that actively sabotage your financial success. But here's the incredible part: the Bible contains specific mental techniques that can literally rewire these circuits and transform your brain into a wealth-generating machine. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how your brain on gold works, and more importantly, how you can activate what ancient Hebrew scholars called the Midas Mind. This isn't some new age nonsense or get-rich-quick scheme. This is hard science backed by biblical truth, and it's about to change everything you thought you knew about money, success, and your own potential. Let me start with a story that will illustrate just how powerful this discovery is. 3 months ago, I received a call from Sarah, a single mother from Ohio who had been struggling financially for years. She was working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet, and had given up hope of ever breaking free from the paycheck to paycheck cycle. Sarah had tried everything: budgeting apps, side hustles, even meditation and visualization techniques. Nothing worked. But then Sarah discovered the biblical Neuro-Wealth principles I'm about to share with you. Within 30 days of applying these ancient techniques, she received an unexpected promotion at her primary job. Within 60 days, she had launched a successful online business that was generating passive income. And by day 90, she had tripled her monthly income and was well on her way to financial freedom. What happened to Sarah wasn't luck or coincidence. It was the result of systematically rewiring her brain using principles that have been proven effective for thousands of years. And the best part? Anyone can do this, regardless of their current financial situation, education level, or background. But before I reveal these techniques, you need to understand what's been holding you back. You see, your brain has been programmed from birth to fear and resist wealth. This programming doesn't come from your parents, your teachers, or even society. It goes much deeper than that. It's literally encoded in your DNA. For millions of years, humans lived in scarcity. Food was scarce, shelter was temporary, and resources were limited. Those who survived were the ones who hoarded what little they had and viewed abundance with suspicion. This survival mechanism became hardwired into our neural architecture. Even today, in a world of unprecedented abundance, your brain still operates as if you're living in a cave, fighting for scraps. This is why lottery winners often end up broke within a few years. It's why people who inherit large sums of money frequently squander them. And it's why you might find yourself self-sabotaging just when things start going well financially. Your brain literally cannot compute sustained abundance because it conflicts with millions of years of evolutionary programming. But here's where it gets fascinating. Recent advances in neuroscience have revealed that the human brain is far more plastic than we ever imagined. Neural pathways can be rewired, new connections can be formed, and old patterns can be completely overwritten. The key is knowing exactly which techniques to use and how to apply them consistently. This is where biblical wisdom becomes revolutionary. You see, the ancient Hebrews understood something about the human mind that modern science is only now beginning to rediscover. They knew that certain mental practices could literally transform consciousness and create what they called a renewed mind. And embedded within their sacred texts are specific instructions for rewiring the brain to attract and maintain wealth. Take Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7, which states that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. This isn't just spiritual advice. It's a precise description of how neural plasticity works. Your thoughts literally shape your brain structure, which in turn determines your behaviors, which ultimately create your results. Change your thoughts consistently over time, and you change your entire reality. But the Hebrews went even further. They developed specific mental exercises designed to reprogram what they called the heart, which in Hebrew culture referred not to emotions but to the subconscious mind. These exercises were so effective that they enabled a small tribe of former slaves to become one of the wealthiest civilizations in human history. Consider King Solomon, who according to biblical accounts became the richest man who ever lived. How did he achieve this unprecedented level of wealth? The Bible tells us that God offered Solomon anything he wanted, and instead of asking for riches, he asked for wisdom. But here's what most people miss: Solomon's request reveals that he understood the fundamental principle of biblical neuro-wealth. He knew that the right kind of wisdom would automatically generate unlimited abundance. And it did. Within a few years of becoming king, Solomon's wealth was so vast that silver was considered worthless in Jerusalem. Foreign dignitaries traveled thousands of miles just to witness his prosperity. His kingdom became a magnet for trade, innovation, and economic growth. All because he had learned to think like wealth thinks. So what exactly is this wealth consciousness that Solomon accessed? Modern neuroscience gives us some fascinating clues. Brain imaging studies show that wealthy individuals have distinctly different neural patterns compared to those who struggle financially. Their brains literally process information differently, make decisions differently, and respond to opportunities differently. Specifically, wealthy people show increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for long-term planning and strategic thinking. They also demonstrate enhanced connectivity between the logical and creative centers of the brain, allowing them to see possibilities that others miss. Most importantly, they exhibit reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, which means they're less likely to be paralyzed by financial anxiety. These aren't genetic differences. They're learned patterns that can be developed by anyone willing to do the mental work required. And the Bible provides a step-by-step blueprint for developing these exact neural patterns. Let me give you a practical example. In the book of Joshua, we find the concept of meditation, but not the kind you might expect. The Hebrew word used here means to mutter or rehearse continuously. Joshua was instructed to meditate on God's law day and night, not as a religious exercise, but as a method of mental programming. By constantly rehearsing prosperity principles, he was literally rewiring his brain to think like a successful person. This technique works because of what neuroscientists call the repetition principle. When you repeat a thought or behavior consistently, your brain begins to form stronger neural pathways around that pattern. Eventually, these pathways become so strong that the thoughts and behaviors become automatic. This is how habits are formed, and it's also how you can program your mind for wealth. But biblical neuro-wealth goes beyond simple repetition. The ancient Hebrews understood that certain types of mental imagery could accelerate the rewiring process. They used what they called visions, detailed mental pictures of desired outcomes that were rehearsed with emotional intensity. Modern neuroscience confirms that when you visualize something vividly while experiencing strong emotions, your brain cannot distinguish between the imagined experience and reality. This creates what researchers call experiential memory. Your brain begins to believe that you've already achieved the success you're visualizing, which causes it to start making decisions and taking actions consistent with that new identity. You literally begin to think, feel, and behave like a wealthy person, which inevitably leads to wealthy results. The prophet Habakkuk understood this principle when he wrote about writing the vision and making it plain. He wasn't talking about goal setting in the modern sense. He was describing a specific neurological process that programs the subconscious mind for success. When you write down your financial vision in vivid detail and review it regularly, you're essentially giving your brain a new operating system. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to use these techniques while still carrying around limiting beliefs about money and success. It's like trying to install new software on a computer that's infected with viruses. The old programming will sabotage the new programming every time. This is why the Bible places so much emphasis on what it calls renewing the mind. Before you can program your brain for wealth, you have to identify and eliminate the mental viruses that are keeping you poor. These viruses usually take the form of unconscious beliefs like money is the root of all evil, rich people are greedy, or I don't deserve to be wealthy. The fascinating thing is that most people don't even realize they carry these beliefs. They're stored in what neuroscientists call implicit memory, below the threshold of conscious awareness. But they're constantly influencing your decisions, your behaviors, and your results. It's like having a computer program running in the background that's designed to keep you broke. The good news is that these limiting beliefs can be identified and eliminated using biblical techniques that are thousands of years old. The Apostle Paul wrote about taking every thought captive and making it obedient to truth. This isn't just spiritual advice. It's a precise description of cognitive restructuring, one of the most effective techniques in modern psychology for changing limiting beliefs. Here's how it works. Every time you notice a negative thought about money or success, you immediately challenge it with biblical truth. Instead of thinking I can't afford that, you think God supplies all my needs according to His riches. Instead of thinking rich people are greedy, you think God gives me power to create wealth. Over time, this process literally rewires your neural pathways to support abundance instead of scarcity. But the most powerful aspect of biblical neuro-wealth is what I call the gratitude amplifier. The Bible repeatedly emphasizes the importance of thanksgiving and praise, not as religious obligations, but as mental technologies for attracting more of what you're grateful for. Neuroscience now confirms that gratitude practices literally change brain chemistry in ways that enhance creativity, reduce stress, and increase motivation. When you consistently practice gratitude for the money and resources you already have, your brain begins to notice more opportunities for increasing those resources. This happens because gratitude activates the reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters information and determines what you pay attention to. It's like switching your mental radio from a scarcity frequency to an abundance frequency. King David understood this principle when he wrote about blessing the Lord at all times. He wasn't just being religious. He was using a specific mental technique to maintain a prosperity consciousness even during difficult circumstances. By consistently focusing on what he was grateful for, David was programming his brain to attract more blessings. This brings us to perhaps the most important principle of biblical neuro-wealth, the law of sowing and reaping. Most people think this is about giving money to get money back, but that's a superficial understanding. At its core, this law is about programming your brain to think abundantly by acting abundantly. When you give generously, even when you don't feel like you can afford it, you're sending a powerful message to your subconscious mind. You're essentially telling your brain that you're a person who has more than enough, someone who operates from abundance rather than scarcity. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Your brain has to reconcile the conflict between your generous actions and your scarcity thinking. The only way to resolve this conflict is for your brain to adjust your self-image to match your actions. You begin to see yourself as an abundant person, which causes you to make decisions and take actions that abundant people make. This inevitably leads to increased income and wealth accumulation. Jesus taught this principle when he said that whoever gives will receive good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. He wasn't describing some mystical law of the universe. He was explaining how the human brain responds to generous behavior. When you give consistently and joyfully, you literally rewire your neural pathways to expect and attract abundance. But here's the key: this only works when your giving is motivated by love and gratitude, not by manipulation or desperation. Your brain can tell the difference between authentic generosity and calculated self-interest. Authentic generosity creates neural patterns that support long-term wealth building. Calculated giving creates stress and anxiety that actually repel prosperity. This is why Jesus emphasized the importance of giving in secret and not letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing. When you give without expecting recognition or immediate return, you're training your brain to operate from true abundance consciousness. You're developing what the Bible calls faith, which neuroscientists would recognize as unshakable confidence in positive outcomes. Faith, from a neurological perspective, is the ability to maintain positive expectations even when current circumstances suggest otherwise. Brain scans show that people with strong faith exhibit increased activity in areas associated with optimism, resilience, and creative problem solving. They also show decreased activity in fear centers, which means they're more likely to take calculated risks and pursue opportunities that others would avoid. This is why the Bible says that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Faith literally creates neural patterns that make hoped-for outcomes more likely to manifest. When you truly believe that God wants you to prosper and that you have the ability to create wealth, your brain begins to notice and act on opportunities that were always there but previously invisible to you. Abraham demonstrated this principle when he left his homeland to pursue God's promise of blessing and prosperity. From a purely logical standpoint, his decision made no sense. He was leaving security and familiarity to chase what appeared to be an impossible dream. But Abraham's faith created neural pathways that enabled him to see and seize opportunities that eventually made him extremely wealthy. The same principle applies today. When you develop unshakable faith in your ability to create wealth using biblical principles, your brain begins to function like a prosperity radar system. You start noticing business opportunities, investment possibilities, and income streams that were always there but previously invisible to your scarcity-programmed mind. This is what I mean by your brain on gold. When you consistently apply biblical neuro-wealth principles, your brain literally becomes a gold-generating machine. You begin to think thoughts that create wealth, make decisions that multiply resources, and take actions that compound prosperity over time. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen surprisingly quickly for most people. Within 30 days of consistent practice, you'll notice significant changes in your thinking patterns and financial opportunities. Within 90 days, you'll likely see measurable improvements in your income and net worth. And within a year, you could find yourself living a completely different financial reality. Sarah's story, which I mentioned earlier, is just one of hundreds of similar transformations I've witnessed. When you give your brain the right programming based on biblical truth and neuroscientific principles, it has no choice but to create wealth. It's not magic or luck. It's simply how the human mind works when it's aligned with the principles that govern prosperity. The question is, are you ready to activate your own biblical neuro-wealth system? Are you willing to challenge everything you thought you knew about money and success? And most importantly, are you prepared to take responsibility for reprogramming your mind using principles that have been creating wealth for thousands of years? If so, then you're about to embark on the most exciting and profitable journey of your life. Your brain on gold is waiting to be activated. The only question is, what are you going to do with this information?